In the previous clip, we have implemented this hasChanges method in the friend repository. Now let's use it in the friend detail view model to enable and disable the save button. So I open up the friend detail view model, and here you can see that the friend detail view model has a save command. That save command is using the onSaveCanExecute method to check if the command can be executed or not. So I right click and I say go to definition. This method is here at the bottom of the friend detail view model. We check if the friend is not null and if the friend doesn't have any errors. Then the user can save. Here we have also a to-do comment, check in addition if friend has changes. This is what we do now. So the first thing I want to do, I want to add a hasChanges property to the friend detail view model. This allows you to use the hasChanges information also in the user interface. Then we will set this hasChanges property by using the hasChanges method of the friend repository. So here I just use the prop full snippet, I press the tab key twice, and I want to have a bool property. The field should be called _hasChanges and the property itself hasChanges. In the setter of the property, I call the onPropertyChanged method of the viewModel base class to raise the property changed event. I move the field to the top of the friend detail view model. Let's just keep our class clean. Now I scroll down to the onSaveCanExecute method, and here I can just use our new hasChanges property. Now we can get rid of this to-do comment. We check already in addition if the friend has changes. Let's scroll up to the hasChanges property, and here in the setter we should also raise the canExecuteChanged event for the save command. If we don't do this, the onSaveCanExecute method is not called if this hasChanges property has been changed. So here I just cast the I command in the save command property into a delegate command, and I call its raise canExecuteChanged method to raise the canExecuteChanged event. Now in the setter of the hasChanges property, I also want to ensure that I execute the logic only if the property has really been changed. So I include a check here if hasChanges is not equal to the value. Now we have a hasChanges property in our friend detail view model that is wired up with the save command. The next thing that we need to do is to set this hasChanges property to the return value of the hasChanges method of the friend repository. When I scroll up in this friend detail view model to the loadAsync method, you can see that we register here an event handler for the property changed event of the friend wrapper. The friend wrapper wraps the friend entity that is loaded in the first line of the loadAsync method by using the friend repository. This means this friend entity is tracked by the DB context that is used inside of the friend repository. This means, in other words, we should access the friend repository's hasChanges method inside of the property changed event handler of this friend wrapper. So here inside of this property changed event handler, I check if the hasChanges property is not true. If that's the case, I set it to the return value of the friend repository's hasChanges method. I include this check here to ensure that we don't call the hasChanges method of the friend repository every time. We only want to call it if hasChanges is not true yet. Now let's go down to the onSaveExecute method of the friend detail view model. After we have saved our friend, we need to adjust our hasChanges property. We just grab again the value from the hasChanges method of our friend repository. Let's run the application and let's see if everything works as expected. I select a friend and you can see the save button is disabled. I type in my second name and the save button is enabled now. When I hit the save button, it gets disabled again. I remove my second name again, the save button is enabled, and I click save and it's disabled again. Quite cool. But now let's see what happens when I enter my second name and then I navigate away to another friend. Now the changes are just lost. But in this case, we should tell the user that he will lose his changes if he navigates to another friend. So that's the next thing that we will implement. In this demonstration, you will learn how you can block the navigation from a changed friend. We will also create a message dialog service to display a message box from the view model. Before we start with the implementation to block the navigation from a changed friend, let's take a look at the application and how it looks to the user. I select here the friend Thomas and I change the first name to Julia. Now without clicking the Save button, I navigate to another friend and I navigate back. Now you see the first name change is lost. It's not Julia anymore, now it's Thomas again. So now we want to implement the logic that the user gets a message that he will lose his changes when he navigates away, and he should be able to cancel the navigation. But how is navigation actually working? When you take a look at the main view model, you can see that we have here a subscription for the Open Friend Detail View event. When we go to the onOpenFriend Detail View method that handles this event, you can see that we create here a new friend detail view model by calling our friend detail view model creator func. We store the created friend detail view model in the friend detail view model property of this main view model. So actually in this method, before we create a new friend detail view model, we can check if the friend detail view model property contains already an object and if it has changes. If that's the case, we can display a message box to the user that tells him that he will lose his changes when he navigates to the new friend detail view model. So let's do this here. I include an if statement and I check if the friend detail view model property is not null. I also check if the friend detail view model has changes. So I grab the has changes property. That property is not available here because the friend detail view model property is of type iFriendDetailViewModel and we haven't defined the has changes property on the interface. But we have it on the friend detail view model class. So when I right click here and I say go to implementation, we are on the property, I right click on the interface, go to implementation, and now we are in the friend detail view model class. And here you can see that we have here the has changes property. Now I just copy bool has changes and I go to the iFriendDetailViewModel interface. And I paste that property here on the interface with a getter. Now we can go back to our main view model and to the onOpenFriendDetailView method. And you see the has changes property is now here. Inside of this if statement, I display a message box. I press Ctrl- to add a using directive for system Windows. I call the show method and I tell the user, you have made changes. And now I ask him, navigate away. I display the caption question on the message box. And I want to display the message box buttons, OK and cancel. Now I store the result of the show method in a small result variable. This allows me to check the result here. And if the result of the message box is cancel, that means the user doesn't want to navigate to another friend detail view model. So here I just jump out of this method with a return statement. That means the logic below where we create the new friend detail view model and assign it to the friend detail view model property is not executed. Now let's see if this works. I navigate through the friends, everything works as expected. Now I change the first name here from Thomas to Julia. I navigate to another friend and now the message box is displayed. I press cancel and you see the navigation didn't work. Now I navigate to another friend and the message box is displayed and I say OK and the navigation works. Let's see what happens when we change the name and we save. Then of course the friend detail view model doesn't have changes and so the has changes property will be false and the message box is not displayed when we navigate away. When we change the first name again and we try to navigate, we get our little message box and I say OK to navigate to the other friend. So our logic works as expected. But if you have watched my course, WPF and MVVM Test-Driven Development of View Models, then you know that you shouldn't display a message box directly from your view model. Displaying this message box would block a unit test on this onOpenFriendDetailView method. Instead of using the message box directly in the view model, we should extract it into a service class that we inject into our view model. And this is what we will do now.